Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show. Cairo, Egypt. 90 million people, the most important and perhaps the only nation in all of the Islamic community, the Ummah, for 1,000 years. Cairo, the Caliphate of Cairo. The governance of Cairo has been the center of the question of the Arab Spring these last 2.5 years. We begin tonight with my two Cairo hands watching Egypt. Sam Tadros is here. Sam has a new book out about the failure of the last 2.5 years for liberal thinking Egyptians as well as those who are struggling right now with the economy. But most importantly, Sam is a man who comes to us with intimate knowledge of the people in the street, not just the lords and masters of Egypt whom you see all the time. Sam is a research fellow at the Hudson Institute's Center for Religious Freedom. Eric Trager of the Washington Institute also joins. Gentlemen, I begin with the breaking news that John McCain and Lindsey Graham were in Cairo these last hours, and the story is up tonight that they met with several Muslim Brotherhood leaders. There are no particular names of the Muslim Brotherhood. They do say they met with the Prime Minister, Hudson al-Bablawa, and the leader of the military, Mr. al-Sisi. They also met with the Vice President, Mohammed al-Baradei. I want to begin with the quote from Mr. McCain. Sam, Mr. McCain says, "We met some Muslim Brotherhood representatives. They were senior-level people. They believe things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. They demand that Morsi get released. They believe it was a military coup, and they are very far apart from the military and the new government." Mr. Tadros, has Mr. McCain told us that there's trouble ahead? Is he flagging to us that there's going to be a violent conflict? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John, and to your viewers. There's a very interesting missing words from McCain's description of his meeting with the Muslim Brotherhood leadership, and those are the words, "and we demand that Morsi is reinstated as president of Egypt." Until now, the Muslim Brotherhood has maintained, at least publicly, that Morsi has to be returned as president, which is, of course, an unrealistic demand. The fact that they didn't mention that in the meeting with McCain might be a hopeful sign in that they realize that they need to achieve other goals, that this is unlikely to happen, and that they need to negotiate and reach a compromise with the military. However, as McCain indicated, the gulf between the Muslim Brotherhood's positions generally and that of the military leadership are extremely wide, are unlikely to narrow at any time in the future, so the possibility of conflict is extremely high.
Mr. Trager, good evening to you. Mr. McCain's words are pointing to the obvious, that the Muslim Brothers believe that Mr. Morsi is held incorrectly, that he must be released. Is that a credible ambition for the Muslim Brothers? Will General al-Sisi permit Morsi to travel freely in the country?
Good evening, and it's good to be with you, and of course, good to be with my good friend Sam Tadros. I don't think that's a credible demand at all. The reality is that what happened on July 3rd is, of course, analytically speaking, a military coup. And what a military coup requires of any military is that it put its opponents, specifically the people that are removed from power, away. So it seems highly improbable that the military will allow the man that it just released to be set free, that it just removed to be set free. And I frankly think it was a poor decision on the part of Senator McCain to repeat these lines in public as if this were a realistic goal.
Within these last days, gentlemen, you know that the envoy from the United States, from the State Department, Mr. Burns, was in Cairo meeting with al-Shatter, who is a significant figure. Morsi is often mentioned, but al-Shatter is very significant in the Muslim Brothers. He also met with al-Baradei and the leadership of the present installed, appointed government in Cairo. Sam, the Representative William Burns, he's praised as a very careful diplomat, very well spoken, very honorable. Did he carry a message to the Muslim Brothers that they wanted to hear? Were they satisfied with his presence?
I think the Muslim Brotherhood is in a sense satisfied that there are continued foreign dignitaries, foreign diplomats and others coming to the country and attempting to solve Egypt's internal problems. In a sense, they realize that if they're left alone to deal with the military, they stand no chance against the tanks, especially that they've lost the battle for public opinion, for the hearts and minds of Egyptians. So in a sense, the continued foreign interest, whether it's by Mr. Burns, McCain, the UAE foreign minister, the Qataris, all those foreign dignitaries and diplomats coming to the country is a good sign for the Muslim Brotherhood, that they are not left completely alone, that there is an attempted mediation, that the military does not have a free hand to move against them. On the other hand, of course, the continued flow of those foreign diplomats has given the military the opportunity to paint this as foreign intervention in Egypt's internal affairs. There's a very ugly anti-American campaign going on in the Egyptian media, which is, of course, under the control of Egypt's current rulers, the military. And Senator McCain today has been the target of very ugly accusations against him, against the United States, and against any American role in the country.
Eric, at this point, does the Muslim Brotherhood want the United States to get involved? Sam is pointing to the fact they're happy for dignitaries to travel. I noticed Catherine Ashton was there as well. But when Mr. Kerry recently said that the coup was a way of restoring democracy, that is not a friendly gesture. So at this point, is there trust between the Muslim Brotherhood and Washington?
There's basically no trust. I think we have to look back on the weekly statement that the Supreme Guide put out last Thursday, in which he basically argued that the entire root of the July 3rd coup was in the United States, that basically the international community, and the United States in particular, gave the green light to the coup, and only then did domestic political forces within Egypt start responding. So remember, the Muslim Brotherhood is an organization deeply hostile towards the West, and that's not going to change. And I certainly agree with what Sam mentioned, that the military is also trying to use anti-Americanism to its advantage. But the one real tangible benefit, I think, that we see from these Burns meetings is that at the very least, you're not seeing a brutal crackdown on the Brotherhood sit-in, which many of us expected and which would have certainly made the situation in Cairo worse.
Sam, you published a piece most recently asking many discerning questions at the Hudson Institute about Egypt, and I want to come down to just the question you pose in the close for the Muslim Brothers. Is the future Qutb or Erdogan? Is there an answer in these last days? Qutb would be violence, confrontation, rejectionism. Erdogan would be a form of state and religion to work together.
I think we won't have an answer anytime soon. We're seeing indications, but in a sense, the Muslim Brotherhood is caught in the moment. The events are happening on the ground, and this is not a time for self-reflection, either by the leadership or questioning of that leadership by the grassroots of the movement, if that is ever to occur. So in a sense, the continuous demonstrations in Cairo are allowing the movement not to ask those questions and to ignore them for the moment. However, we are going to see those questions being asked in the future. Already, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda, has issued statements about, we told you so. We told you that the ballot box was not the way forward. The Muslim Brotherhood's route is obviously not working, and only our route, the jihadi route, is the one that can succeed in establishing the dream. So if you follow the Islamist websites, there is an internal debate going on between Brotherhood members, between Salafis, between jihadists, on which road is to be taken. What are we to learn from the mistakes that have happened, and why we have reached this position that we are in today?
Eric, is there a rush to restore democracy with an election in Cairo? Is that going to happen quickly?
Oh, I wouldn't expect that at all. My view is basically that the military was hesitant to come back, didn't really want to. It remembered its experience in power in 2011, 2012. But once it made the decision that it had to come back, it's coming back with a vengeance. And I think that it's going to be a very repressive rule by the military, one in which they first focus on the Muslim Brotherhood, which they remove from power, but then which they try to maintain their narrow interests but with the understanding that if they remove themselves too quickly from the political scene, they could lose those interests and risk the reemergence of a party that might not be so friendly to their bureaucratic interests. So I think if the military is not going to necessarily speed the path towards democracy, and if it does, those elections will probably be pretty flawed.
Eric Trager of the Washington Institute and Samuel Tadros of Hudson Institute. And Sam is the author most recently of Motherland Lost, the Egyptian and Coptic Quest for Modernity, just published. I'm John Batchelor. When we come back, the people of Egypt, the people struggling with the economy, what do they see in all of this lords and ladies coming and going at their palace? This is the John Batchelor Show.